Over the last 12 days, I've done a ton of work. Frankly, I don't remember a period in my life that I've done kind of more work in the gym than I have done in the last 12 days. It's been an incredible time. I've squatted 200 kilos every single one of those days, and I've done a lot of accessory lifts, accessory movements, pin squats, leg extensions primarily. But I've been kind of thinking about how to further keep pushing that momentum in the right direction. I've been heavily focused on the quads. The one thing that's kind of been on my mind, and I've done a lot of work kind of off camera, if you will, is that I've been stretching the hamstrings like day and night. Every chance I get, I go into a hamstring stretch. And that is purely because I feel my hamstrings are really, really tight. Now, at the start of the 12-day streak, I thought to myself, okay, it's just a side effect of squatting heavily. I just thought to myself, they are getting tight because they're overworked, because I'm pushing really hard. Now I'm of the opinion something else is happening. So every single time I did leg extensions in the last 12 days, it almost feels like it's exacerbating the tightness in my hamstrings, which is interesting. Today I've come in and feeling tight in the hamstring again. I stretched before training because I want to get into that ATG position comfortably. And if I have tight hamstrings, my butt starts to wink. I start to kind of round my back in the bottom, and I lose tightness through the core. So I know for a fact, just from trial and error over the period of my Squat Everyday series, that I need long hamstrings in order for me to get into these positions. Today I've come in, and yes, yesterday I did a lot of work, and so I've got a reason to have tight hamstrings. So yesterday I basically did hamstrings, right? I did deadlifts. Today I've come in and they're super, super tight. I stretched them. And I kind of worked my way up to 200 today. It was okay, but I want you to pay attention to the sticking point. The sticking point today was awkwardly high. It was almost like a quarter squat position. And in that position, I feel like it's basically just hip extension. I just have to kind of like send my hips through. I felt weird in the hip, but not in the same sensation as I've kind of had hip pain in the past. I just felt weird kind of in the hamstring area. No DOMs, no pain, nothing like that. I just feel like they're kind of gnarly and locked in. So I've got the kind of urge to go stretch them again. And then I've kind of had a brain wave, if you will, going back to the same statement that I've tried, many times in the past. And this statement is along the lines of, if you have a tight muscle, it probably is a weak muscle. So a tight muscle is a weak muscle. Now, it's not fail-proof. It's not every single time in every single circumstance. Especially in athletes, it can be an overworked muscle that's tight. But for the general population, most of the time is, if you have tight hamstrings, they're probably really weak and barely holding on. And that's why they've kind of locked up. The fascia around the muscle has kind of reacted and locked down to protect the tissue that it's holding. So that tightness is usually a kind of fascial response to a weakness underlying. So that kind of went through my mind, and I thought to myself, okay, I wonder if this hamstring is actually weak. Pay attention to this grinding kind of spot. It's really, really weird. I'm still kind of thinking about it. I laughed at the cameraman. I'm like, man, I don't know what that was. He just felt really, really heavy today. I understand. I'm tired from yesterday. I did a lot of work yesterday. It was a freaking rampage to the gym. I did everything kind of max. But this symptom, this inkling of this hamstring business has been happening to me for the last week. And I didn't want to change the recipe, right? I've said this a number of times in the last sort of 12 videos. I'm very hesitant to change things when things are going well. But this hamstring kind of thing is kind of popping up in my head more and more. I'm spending a lot of time stretching. And I've said this many times before. Sometimes I stretch like a maniac, and the following morning I wake up, it is as though I'd never stretched anything the previous day. And I always have that urge to stretch, but it always goes back to square one. I don't know whether you guys have kind of had that same sensation. I know a lot of people have talked about hamstring tightness and whatnot. You got to stretch what's tight. And I don't know if that's the case, because if you think about it, the body is not dumb. The body's getting tight for a reason. Sure, it can be overwork, but I have an inkling that I think that I have a hamstring weakness. And now I literally feel like I'm going insane when I think about, is it the hamstring, is it the quads? What is freaking weak? Am I better at pulling or pushing or whatever the case might be? I feel like I'm going nuts. But this hamstring tightness seems to be popping up more and more. I feel like I need to dedicate more and more time into stretching. Now, it's all well and good. It's all well and good when I'm on annual leave and I've got ample time. But when I go to work, I won't be able to just go into a freaking hamstring stretch mid-recess. You know what I mean? Like I don't have the opportunity to stretch 5 times a day. So I wonder, in the previous times before where I've had kind of good stretches and then the hip pain comes in, whether the hip pain is going to come back in again if I just continue as I am and forget about stretching the hamstring. Maybe that hamstring manifestation, progresses into a development of hip pain. So my mind is racing right now. I'm thinking about it. And so in this session, I put all these shoes again because I literally feel like I need to practice squatting with all these shoes. This time around, I decided to pause at the bottom for some of these reps. I paused 180. I tried to pause 200. And as I was kind of coming out of the hole, I just feel the hamstring is not right. So after I failed the 200 kilos with the Ollie shoes, I went back to the seated hamstring curl machine. And I really try to kind of lean over, kind of flex the hip to kind of even further stretch the hamstring and then contract. I basically used that exercise as an activation exercise. After that, I went back to squatting again. So for the third freaking run through of the squats. And I worked all the way up to 180, hit 180. And basically I used that as an experimentation to see whether activating the hamstring is going to make me feel better. And something interesting happened. Even though I'm fatigued from yesterday and also today, right? And then I did the hamstrings, I went back to squats. The squats felt uniquely good. That sticking point felt smooth. It's interesting. I did one run up to 200, another run up to 200, and a third run up to 180. And I feel like the third run up was better than the first two purely because, this is my little experiment mid-session, purely because I activated the hamstrings. The hamstrings kind of relaxed a little bit, I think, because I've sent blood in there. The fascia maybe released a little bit, and I had that range of motion. So I'm just wondering right now whether there's something to these hamstrings. The cameraman said to me in the car on the way back from the gym, he said to me, dude, I don't think you've got weak quads. There's no way you can squat 200 with weak quads, especially the way you squat. I've gone back and forth in my time thinking it's definitely the hamstring. No, it's definitely the quad. It's definitely the hamstring. Definitely. And each time I've kind of experimented, but I've never had a period like this in my life where I've had incredible training. And now I'm kind of fiddling with it, thinking about it, what's actually happening here. And the symptoms for me, the symptoms are, I need to stretch these hamstrings 24/7. And I'm wondering whether I'm making any freaking change. I get relief from the stretch. It gives me a better kind of sensation that it's long. And then the moment I freaking walk off, it feels like half an hour later, I just go back to square one. And I don't know whether stretching in this situation is going to be healthy. I'll do this exercise, and literally within 30, 40 minutes after this, I feel like I've come back from the gym, showered, I'm sitting back in my garage now talking to you guys, and I feel like my hamstring doesn't need stretching because there's blood there, it's activated, I've done something. So my mind's racing again. I'm trying to work things out. That bottom position seems to be feeling better when the hamstrings are on board, when my brain kind of has recognized, all right, we've got some muscle there, we can use that. Anyway, I know a lot of you guys are going to say, dude, you've been squatting for 12 days in a row, 13 days today, hitting 200. Of course, something's going to go tight. Why aren't the quads tight? Why is it the hamstring that's tight? That's my question to you. Everything else feels real good. Why is it the hamstring screaming? I wonder now whether my first assumption of I squat and I use a lot of hamstrings, maybe that hypothesis was wrong by me. Maybe my squat doesn't have a lot of hamstring involvement, even though I lean forward a little bit. And maybe these crazy days that I've done have neglected the hamstrings, and now the hamstrings are freaking out because they're really weak compared to all the other structures, and the fascia has gone, screw this, let's lock the shop down, make sure we don't snap the freaking hamstring of the bone, make sure we don't tear something, and that's the story. So if I actively use accessories to target that particular weakness that I'm maybe developing, maybe the hamstring just starts to release and I start getting better and better feelings in the squat. Because when I went back to the squat, man, I definitely felt better today after the hamstring pump. And I know back in the day, God rest his soul, man. John Meadows, man. Like I used to watch a lot of his videos. He was one of the guys that said, do your hamstrings before you squat and you will feel better. That kind of was rolling in my head as well. And I thought maybe this is what's happening. Like maybe this is something that I should think about as well. And also, if I want to take you guys back to the last sort of week and that kind of manifestation of a crazy ass pump in the lower back. What do we know about lower back? A lot of people have come to me in my private life and they said, look, I've got a back injury. What do you suggest? The first thing I always say is psoas. The psoas goes from T12 all the way to L5. That's where it originates. It's a fan type looking muscle and inserts into your proximal femur. So if you have a back problem, your psoas might be weak or too tight. Most likely it's weak because a lot of people don't freaking squat every day and are not athletes. So if you just add a little bit of strength through just simple standing, single leg, single knee raises, you tend to address that issue. I've been developing these crazy ass pumps, so I'm wondering, maybe my lower back is doing work for itself and another structure. What's another structure that's involved in hip extension and protecting the lower back? Your hamstring. The glute and the hamstrings are basically number one hip extensors of the human body. If you start having trouble with your lower back, it is likely that your hamstrings and glutes are weak and they're not firing, and you've got instability through the trunk because you might not be hip hinging purely. You might be arching your back too much because you're trying to make up for the lack of pull by the hamstrings or the glutes. So all these things are happening. I've got tight hamstrings and I've got a lower back pump. I think these two things are not just a coincidence. I think these two things are related. There's a correlation there between these two things. And now today, when I had that little weird sticking point, a weird sensation in my hamstring, I'm like, I don't like what it's telling me. I think I need to have a chat to my hamstrings. And this is what kind of led me to this. And so then I went to 180. 180 felt good. I want to say this again. The feedback that I got from my body doing this, even though I just freaking ran through 2 lots of sprint ups to 200, it felt good. So I'm going to watch this with you guys and see if there was a sticking point. And I know it's not 200. Yeah. Anyway. I feel like there's something to this. Where does this leave me? I want to say that I want to substitute leg extensions for seated hamstring curls for the next few days and really pay attention how I feel and how my hamstrings feel. Maybe I don't need to stretch like a maniac all the time. Maybe my body's trying to tell me something. Anyway, my mind's on fire again, guys. Trying to work this stuff out. Hopefully you got something out of it today. Let's see how I pull up tomorrow. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace out.